Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Gee, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, man? The coffee's starting to kick in. There's no better place to be in the path of recovery.
You know what's funny? They say
Highway to Hell or Path to Recovery. Take your pick.
Highway to Hell.
Well, I was there for a while, but I mean, it's a good song. But
yeah, it's a great song.
Bad place to be.
Terrible lifestyle, right?
Totally, man. How you doing, brother?
Doing awesome, man. I really am. And I know we did a whole episode on it's okay to be okay, but I am doing bubbly bumble.
It's super
whatever.
bumblebee fantastic.
Whatever, man.
I know, that's awesome.
I mean, no, literally, I say to my wife often, and she does. I say, pinch me, because the world I'm living today, it's, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's so easy to compare old Mike with new Mike from old Mike. That's right. Just, I mean, it's a layup. I mean, I know where my car is today. I don't urinate myself. I mean, there are simple life pleasures that I experience now that I don't take for granted.
You know what's funny is I spent some time. I mean, and one of our sayings is we can't read the label on our own jar, right? So, you know, I mean, one of the things I do is I analyze year by year. And from 2018 to 2022, each year was the best year of my life. Mm-hmm. And 23 is going to blow away 22. So, but I spent 8 hours with one of my investors yesterday. And we were leaving in the parking lot. We were standing there for a couple of minutes talking, you know, before we left. We played golf and then a 3-hour dinner. And he looked at me, he says, Glenn, he says, I have to tell you, he goes, you are such a different guy today than when I met you 5 years ago.
Wow.
He goes, I just sit here and I'm amazed at the stuff you've got going on, the stuff you're delivering. And he knows my sober story, right? And he looked at me and kind of like looking for an answer, right? And I'm like, sobriety is a superpower.
Yeah.
And he goes, is it really? I'm like, I couldn't even begin to explain.
Yeah. And it's
just crazy. So I love sobriety. I love being here, and I love.
Hey, do you love Table for Threes?
I love them, man.
Good,
fantastic.
because we got one today.
I know. I'm really looking forward to it.
Let's introduce Gary. Gary, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, guys. Great to be here.
What's up, man? Welcome.
I really appreciate you having me on here today. Hey, I got to say one quick thing. You said highway to hell. I heard this just the other day, you know. Why is there a highway to hell and there's only a stairway to heaven?
Yeah, right. Oh, there you go.
I've never heard that either, man.
Nice.
That's fantastic. That's something to think about.
Nice. Yeah, so Gary, it's good to have you in the coffee shop.
Maybe, let me jump in.
Yeah.
Maybe because there's more people going to hell than going to heaven.
Maybe.
And maybe because taking stairs is hard. Mm-hmm. So it's harder to go to heaven than it is sliding to hell.
We'll analyze that. We'll analyze that in a separate blog. I don't know.
That's awesome.
So, Gary,
Welcome, Gary.
super excited to have you this morning. Gary is, I'll do a little backstory. Gary reached out to us on social media. He's got this really exciting project going on online. It's a podcast that is the Begin Again. Am I saying it right? The Begin Again podcast, right?
Yes, sir. The Begin Again podcast.
Yeah, Begin Again podcast. And what I really like about it is it. You know, a lot of times we'll get in here and we'll start retrashing some of our war stories, right? And, yeah, we touch on the war stories a little bit, or Begin Again touches on the war stories a little bit. But what it does do is it focuses on the ability and the joy of the other side of recovery and the all the positive things that come with the accomplishments, I guess is the word I'm looking for. You know, it's to your point, to your guy at the country club. It's amazing how productive we can be, and it's amazing what we're accomplishing these days.
Well, first, and Gary, welcome. I think it's kind of funny because it's almost like Walmart inviting Target into Walmart. Right?
Oh, right.
So Gary's got a sober podcast project, right? And so do we, And yet, you know what? This has nothing to do with competition, right?
No.
I mean, first of all, the market's massive, right? So, and we don't even care about that. We're trying to help one alcoholic, right? But I mean, we are all pro sobriety, man.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Nothing matters except, hey, let's try to help somebody else. But and frankly, when we connect with other kind of influencers and projects out there, I learn.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. So, man, I'm looking forward to jumping in, exploring a little bit.
Yeah. What made you start the podcast? Give us a little background on that, because I'm sure that's where your story blends in, right?
And your studio looks great, man.
Thank you. It does. And to be totally honest, I can't put an actual real finger on how I started the podcast. The podcast was not on my radar. The word podcast was barely in my vocabulary. I listen to them once in a while, but I'm always interested in doing other things. And I think, Glenn, kind of to your point of what your friend was saying in the parking lot is, in sobriety, and this is sort of a fairly new revelation, but I have more dreams and goals at 49 years old, 17 plus years in sobriety than I ever have in my whole life. And it dawned on me, like, that is because of my sobriety. That's because I have this new lease on life, because my life's a complete 180 from where it was. And I love what you said too, that sobriety is a superpower, because it really is a superpower. And I guess how I really got here is, I always wanted to do more. I always wanted to help more, Mike. I would even tell my sponsor, like, I don't have enough sponsees. I need to sponsor more guys. And he'd say, Gary, it's not about your sponsee roster. Like, you're helping a lot of people by going to all the meetings you go to. Mm-hmm. You do have a bunch of sponsees, but you raise your hand, you participate. Like, you're helping a lot of people. I said, yeah, I just want to do more. And you know what he said? He goes, all right, just pray to God and tell him to send you some more guys. And I did, and I started doing that. And guess what? God started sending me some more guys. And this podcast, I had some friends in a different area, not sober, not one of us, who started a podcast, a business podcast. And it just, I don't know, I guess it's kind of lighted the fire. And I said, man, maybe this is a way I can help more people, and maybe a little bit at scale. And I've had so many crazy ideas in the last 20 plus years of entrepreneurial ideas, and my wife has heard every single one of them. And I put together this mission statement for the Begin Again podcast, and it was really strong, I thought, and powerful. And I texted her and I said, oh God, what's she even say now when she hears I'm going to start a podcast? And I sent it to her, and she called me right back. She said, Gary, drop everything else that you're doing, and this is your calling. Do this. This is going to be amazing. And here I am. I had you on, Mike, which was a wonderful episode. And, as far as, I'll say this too, which was not on the radar at all, is the amazing people and amazing communities that I have met in such a short amount of time. Like you guys, it's really a blessing, and it's a gift, and it's one of the best parts of it.
I know. Don't you find that talking about sobriety is so cathartic? I mean, it just does so much for my sobriety. Having people on, just exploring, going a little deeper into sobriety and how it makes you tick. It's like a meeting every time you're on a podcast. It's good stuff.
It really is. It's the connection. I say a quick prayer before. I spoke at an in-person meeting last night, and I say the same prayer last night as I did this morning. It's, God, please, speak through me, and please let me help one person today. And that's what the mantra of the podcast is. Let's help one person today. And I say that, hoping that this thing grows really wildly, and we help more than one person. And your point about, the competition of it, that we're in a spot where you hear the word crowded market, right? Like there can't be enough of us.
Yeah,
there just cannot be enough of us.
No, I love that, man. There's plenty of Walmarts and Targets, but there's not enough of us.
That's right.
Right. All right. So, hey, Gary, if I could just dig into kind of some housekeeping. So how often does your podcast come out? How do people find you? What's kind of the format of it? I think I saw that Brad Pitt was on your podcast, right?
We had Brad Pitt. Yeah. We had Brad Pitt. Brad Cooper's coming next week.
That's awesome. And then Robert Downey Jr. and Rob Lowe, right? No, so just tell us about your podcast, the format. I mean, our gig is kind of a coffee shop, just because we're coffee addicts, but.
Yeah, I got my coffee here too, and I love what you guys are doing. I think it's amazing. Mine's pretty straightforward. It drops every week, every Thursday. You can find it across wherever you get your podcasts. It's called the Begin Again Podcast. The website is thebeginagainpodcast.com, and I'm all over Instagram That's kind of where I'm focusing on the social media portion of it. It's the Begin Again podcast on Instagram. You can DM me, and
we just followed you.
What's that?
We just followed you. You have one more follower.
It's funny. I never cared about that. I was barely on social media for the whole entire time. Never cared about follows and likes, and now I'm like trying to see how I can build this thing, and I get some more follows. It's funny how life is sometimes.
I'll let my mom know about your podcast.
Mom is an awesome listener.
Appreciate that. Yeah, so it drops every week, every Thursday, and the format is like how Mike had described. I want to hear how we got here, but I really trying to focus on life in sobriety and all the stuff that we get. And you're looking at someone here whose life is a complete 180 from where it was 17 plus years ago. It's one thing to get sober, but it's I remember early on, when I was struggling, I was in and out of the rooms. And when I heard someone more accomplished than me, or maybe higher up, I had a guy who ran a trading desk who was sober, like maybe actors, like you had mentioned. Like when I heard they were sober, it helped me. Like, and I thought maybe that could help other people too. And then, you come into the meetings and you just hear every time I go to a meeting or talk to people, you just hear these incredible, complete life transformations, these miracles. And it just kind of dawned on me. I said, man, I think more people than the 30 or 40 or 50 or 10 people in this room could benefit to hear from some of this stuff. And so that's how that's the format, I guess, if you will. It's still growing. It's a moving target. I'm pretty straightforward. I don't have it's the first time I've ever done any kind of interview type stuff. I do have guests on every week. I've got an amazing group of recordings coming out in the next couple of months, and it's really powerful. It's about connecting. And this is a new term I heard since I started the podcast, guys. It's recover out loud. And I was always so open with people about that I'm sober. If you need help, please, I'm a resource to you. But since I started the podcast, like I've gotten so many, even within my own community, my own friends, my own family reaching out to me. I had my friend's wife's brother was in the ER the other day, drinking himself to death, 52 years old. And she'd say, what do I do? And, within a couple of hours, we got him to a rehab, and I had another family member call me and say, hey, this guy, he lost his family, he lost his house. I need some help. You're the only person I can think of. And it's not lost on me that, these people know I'm sober, but they wouldn't have necessarily reached out to me first if not for the podcast. So, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it is service.
It is a beautiful thing. Yep. There's two things you said that really jumped out at me, and the word transformational, I don't use lightly. And my life has been a complete transformation. I mean, you say 180. I mean, mine's just been a complete transformation. And then the other thing is miracle. And Glenn and I argue about this a little bit, but it is a miracle. I mean, I'm a statistical anomaly. I wouldn't have bet $5 on myself. I wouldn't have bet $5 on myself that I was going to be 5 years sober. There was no way. And here I am. It's unexplainable. And that's what I say a miracle is, something that's totally unexplainable.
I couldn't agree
I won't
more.
debate you today.
Yeah, Glenn won't debate me today.
No, Gary, we go back and forth because I say, hey, in my mind, a miracle is, if I woke up tomorrow and I lost 30 pounds overnight, that would be a miracle. Mm-hmm. But if I go to the gym every single day and I eat right and I work with a nutritionist and I work with a trainer and I'm doing all the right things over 2 years, and then all of a sudden I lost 30 pounds over 2 years, I mean, is that a miracle, or is that a byproduct of doing the next right thing in a very disciplined fashion, day after day, when I feel like it, when I don't feel like it? Mm-hmm. Is it a byproduct of doing the next right thing? Mm-hmm. So that's an ongoing debate that Mikey and I have had for probably 2 years now.
I'd like to join it. I'd like to join it just for a second, if you guys would. I honestly, hearing your description, I think it's both. I really think it's both. And here's why I think it's both, because, we're talking about the definition of a miracle, right? But let's go back to your friend in the parking lot. Like if he zooms out 5 years and says, Mike 5 years ago to Mike, yesterday in the parking lot, completely different person, I would say that's a miracle. If you knew me 17 plus years ago and you saw the path I was on and the soul sickness I had and where I was going with my life to where I am today, I think it's a long drawn out miracle. And to your point, I agree with you as well, Glenn. It is putting the work in. It's doing this. It's putting in the steps. It's going to meetings. It is doing the work. So I think it's both. I guess I'm playing Switzerland.
I was just gonna say thank you, Switzerland, for checking in.
Gary lives in Switzerland. That's awesome. No, man. Hey, I really like how you put that soul sickness.
Yeah.
I mean, and we were just talking a little bit a while ago about ego, and ego is a masker of soul sickness. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just not real, right?
Yeah, soul sickness. I like that term.
Ego, I heard this too, and I haven't said this, but the ego, EGO, is edged God out. You're pushing out your higher power, and ego is such a big topic, right? And there's a lot that goes into ego, and when I did the steps, I bring up the word fear, because fear and ego could be intertwined at some points. I didn't think I was afraid of anything, guys. And I kind of went out that way. Mm-hmm. But I learned in sobriety that I was really everything. I had a ton of fear across the board. And ego, the fears I have today is, self-centered fear or projected fears. I'll sit here and I'll be like, oh, what happens if this happens in the future? Or I don't get this and that. It's all BS. My sponsor had said, my sponsor said to me, I wasted so much time worrying about stuff that never happened. And so when I'm in a bad spot and I'm projecting, fears, financial insecurities, they're all in the future. When I have both feet right here, I'm in the present, and I'm in the day, and I'm sitting at the table presently with Sober Coffee, you guys, I'm in a good spot. So
man, I love that, because I'm there right now. I call it head trash, right? Those fears, I call it head trash. And what I am, here's the tools that I use today, because this is active. I mean, I got a lot of stuff going on the business side, and everything doesn't go, unicorns and rainbows, right? There's challenges on a regular basis. And let's say in a situation, 25 things can go wrong, or there could be 25 outcomes, right? And my mind, the energy in my mind and mental space, head trash, focuses on the 5 that are devastating. Now, the probability of those 5 happening, as I think through things logically, because that's part of my process now, like, okay, what's the probability of that happening? Okay, 0.1. What's the probability of this? 0.2. And then I think through and I'm like, okay, what's the probability of this happening? Okay, 50%. Hey, let me put some brain power and focus on that. So now I ignore all the head trash stuff. I just very disciplined about that today. But one of the things with this point in my sobriety and just kind of using tools, because I'm confident in the tools that I use, because I saw them work for others, and then I see them work in my life, is we actually, I actually have a saying that I say to myself. There is not a situation today, over the last 8+ years, Gary, you got 17 years, Mike, you got 5, there's not a situation today that I cannot get through. I don't care what happens. I will get through it. I've got the tools. I've got a team of AA brothers. I've got connections now. Gary, I'm adding you to that list, of hey, we don't do this alone. And ego, when I did it all alone, that's when the fear really grasped in, And I hit situations all the time today where I'm like, you know what? Can't do this alone. I can do it better with somebody else. And there's so much confidence in that, right? That I don't have to worry about all those. I'm worried about fear less than I ever have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Sobriety is a superpower.
Sobriety is a superpower. And another saying, which I really love and which I use a lot, Glenn, is you can't live in fear and faith at the same time. So, and I'll go times and I suffer through everything you had just said for sure, but I'll go through times where I'll start beating myself up, like, sober 17 years, I've been through so much, and I would have made a heart attack 4 years ago. Like, I should be like just on this cloud of life, and playing with house money, and that's just not how it goes. But and I was beating myself up for a long time, and I realized, like, Gary, stop beating yourself up. Just use the tools. It's all right that you don't wake up on this, this cloud of everything's perfect. Just work towards it, and you stay in the day. There's what's that other? It's a beautiful poem. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. That's why today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Stay here. And all these little sayings, none of this was we were saying this when we were kids, like this. You're talking about connecting with other people, right? Like sharing stuff with other men. That wasn't that wasn't allowed. Like,
no.
You didn't share your feelings.
No way,
you
man.
kept it all alone.
That's right.
No way.
And, that's another thing that I learned is, not only is sharing and connecting or helping someone or reaching out for help, not only not a weak thing, it's a beautiful act of courage. And I think that's another thing that people need to hear, especially early on. Like, speak up, raise your hand. If you need help, you got to ask for help. And we were born, and I've already talked to Mike. We weren't raised that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
You keep everything in. You don't tell anybody anything. Yada yada. It couldn't be farther from the truth.
Well,
and that's what we get. Meetings, we get connections.
Totally get. I mean, I grew up with my dad. My dad was a good example, but I mean, he's like, hey man, find it, fix it yourself. Asking for help is a weakness, right? Mm-hmm. Don't ask for help. Figure it out. And early in business too, it was like, hey man, don't come ask me every time you have a question. My manager used to say that. Go figure it out, right? Yeah. So now when I have, I have a drinking problem. I'm trying to figure it out myself, right? I'm trying to be the solution, and man, that's just not how that works.
No, and I love. I've been hung on what you said about edge got out, and it's edging guys out too. Because it's not. Did
you just make that up?
Yes, it's a natural tendency. Shush. It's a natural tendency for me to be on my own and to do it on my own. I mean, that's just because I can rely on myself. I know myself. But I had a guy yesterday. He's in rehab, and he needs a ride. And I'm like, he's like, oh, I hate to be asking you to do this. I go, dude, here's the beginning of your journey, and you got to understand we don't do this alone. You call me anytime, 24/7. I will get in my car and give you a ride. I mean,
that's awesome, man.
Because people did it for me, right?
Yep, I know. Way to give back. So, Gary, how long have you done your podcast, and how many episodes, and what's some cool ones that are up and coming?
Yeah, so it's fairly new. Episode 10 came out on Thursday. Comes out, like I said, every week. I've got, I started this. I have a strong community Rolodex of people that I can bring on this podcast that I've known forever, and I didn't want to do it that way. I didn't want to start it that way. I wanted to start it cold. I kind of went after it like a business, to be honest with you. I reached out to people cold. I had no idea. Like, I had this great idea, and then I was like, great, but oh my God, how am I going to get people on?
I got no product. I got a great story. I got no product.
Exactly. But really quickly, I got a few that I reached out to cold, started recording them. They started going well. I started, putting it on Instagram a little bit, promoting it, a little bit, and now there's people coming to me, and now I get those DMs like, hey man, straight. That's the other thing, which is just to make. I'm sure you guys get it too. Like, you get a DM on the side like, hey, I heard you on the show yesterday, man, and I really appreciate it. I'm struggling with this too. Like, what do you think? And I'm talking to them. The guy, guys in the UK. I'm like, man, there's something else, something bigger going on here.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I had Tim Lodgen. What a story! I had him on Thursday night. Well, we recorded it Thursday night. Like, just unbelievable transformation stories. And if you hear this one, Glenn, you're going to say, all right, that guy's a miracle.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, frankly, I look forward to tuning in. I look forward to checking it out. Your studio's excellent. Has a lot of like professional sports and from what I understand, in fact, I got a project I'm working on that, just the how the professional sports industry is crippled with alcoholism and drug addiction,
Oh, sure.
and people in, just trying to find sobriety, trying to find recovery, and just the impact that we can have across every walk of life.
Right, and it's and people are hungry for it right now. I think the numbers speak for themselves. The statistics, and it breaks my heart. Breaks my heart that because I know there's a better way to live out there, and I know that if I'm open and willing to listen, and then act on one nugget, edging God out. That's my takeaway for today. Don't do that. That's my learn. That makes me better today than I was yesterday, focusing on that. Thank you so much, Gary.
Yeah, Gary, thanks for jumping in.
Let's bookend that.
Love
again. Where do they go? Give the website.
The website is thebeginagainpodcast.com, and I'm on Instagram at the Begin Again Podcast. I'm on Facebook as well, but I really focus on Instagram.
Yeah, love what
and the podcast is across all wherever you get your podcasts.
Love what you do, Gary. Keep doing it, man. I'm so glad you're in my phone now.
Right back at you guys. It means I love what you're doing, and it's good to be on the same team here together today.
Walmart and Target.
Walmart and Target just
coming
merged.
Together.
Look out, Amazon.
We're starting a new market here.
That's right.
I love it. I love it.
A mega store. The mega store.
You rock, man. Thanks, Gary.
Gary, thanks, man. Thanks for
having me, guys.
Take
care.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago.